Your OCD is trauma, even if you have no memory of anything traumatic. When a client tells me they don't have any trauma, the first thing I ask them is this: define trauma for me. Because most people are working from a definition of trauma that's far too narrow. And when we expand it, everything changes. Hi, I'm John Hawkins Jr. I'm a licensed psychotherapist and co founder of Hawkins Counseling Center in Boynton Beach, Florida. This is one of the most important videos in this series because it speaks directly to you if you've been told your OCD isn't trauma based because you can't identify a specific trauma. Most people define trauma as something dramatic, an accident, abuse, a violent event. And yes, those are traumatic. But that definition misses an enormous amount of people who are actually carrying various traumas. Here's the problem with the dramatic definition, or what we call the big T trauma definition. Trauma is not defined by what happened to you. It's defined by what your nervous system couldn't process. Trauma is intrapsychic. It doesn't matter what happened in the external environment. What matters is what your nervous system couldn't regulate. The best definition of trauma I've heard to date comes from Dr. Diana Fosha, the developer of AEDP therapy. Her definition asserts that trauma is unwanted and unwilled, overwhelming emotions in the face of aloneness or helplessness. Let me say that again. Unwanted and unwilled, overwhelming emotions in the face of aloneness or helplessness. By that definition, you don't need to have experienced a big T trauma or some dramatic event. It requires overwhelming emotions that you couldn't manage, that nobody helped you manage, that you faced alone. How many moments in your childhood fit that description? That's what your OCD is protecting you from. Now, here's why you have no conscious memory of any of this in many cases. When we experience unregulated emotional energy, the brain does something to protect itself. It activates the dorsal vagal nerve that triggers a dissociative process. It splits off the overwhelming experience into its own isolated neural network. The thalamus then triggers a release of endogenous opiates, the brain's natural pain blockers, which then blocks that information from reaching your explicit or conscious memory. So the experience happened, your nervous system recorded it, but your conscious mind was protected from it. The OCD part developed to make sure that it stayed that way. It's not hiding the trauma from you out of cruelty or bad intention. It's hiding it because it believes you can't handle it. And that was the experience at the time, but you're not in that state any longer. I worked with a client one time who was absolutely sure she had never been through anything traumatic. Good childhood, loving parents, nothing dramatic. And yet she had been experiencing severe OCD since she was 7 years old. When I asked her to consider Dr. Fosha's definition of trauma, she went silent. And then she said, I cried alone a lot as a child in my room. I never felt like anyone understood or cared about what I was actually feeling. That's Dr. Fosha's definition exactly. Her OCD wasn't some random misfiring of networks or parts of the brain. It was protecting a 7-year-old child who felt profoundly with emotions too big to carry alone. If you've been told that your OCD isn't trauma based because you can't remember any specific trauma memories, ask a different question. Not did something traumatic happen, but were there moments of overwhelming emotions that you felt alone or were helpless to do anything to? Moments where you felt helpless and nobody came. Your OCD is not a brain malfunction. It's a record of something that was too much, and it is resolvable. Drop a comment if this video activated something for you. Link is in the bio. I'm John Hawkins Jr., and I'll see you in the next video.